In this recording, I want to talk about the conditional functions that Access includes that allows you to manipulate and create calculated fields. Particularly, we're going to be focusing on the if function, which is very similar to the if function that you may have learned about in the Excel class. We're also going to take a look at the isNull function. Null is the Access and mostly database management term for missing. If a field has no data in it, it's considered null. And finally, we'll take a quick look at a switch function, which is a little more advanced, doesn't get used very often, but you'll see is relatively easy to use once you've seen it once or twice. In order to do this, I want to create a query called query pizzas that lists all the customers that we have and the pizzas that they've ordered, and we'll manipulate that to some extent. But again, the customer names are in one table and the orders are in another. But I've already created in the last unit this query that concatenates the fields together, so I can display the name either this way or that way. Unfortunately, with this query, there's a problem. I cannot link this query to the orders table where all the size and other information is available because there's no ID number in here. Without the ID number, there's nothing these two tables have in common. I can't link them together. So I'm going to revert back and use my customer lookup query. The customer lookup query also does a concatenation, but it includes the customer ID, which allows me to link to the orders table. So if you're going to create a query with that access multiple objects, either queries or tables, you must make sure that they have a common field that allows them to be linked. So I'm going to create a table, or pardon me, a query in Design View, and I'm going to use the orders table, and I'm going to link that to a query. This is often a new concept for people when you create forms, reports, queries. You can base them on other queries. I think I've tried it, and you can chain up to 6 queries together. So you create a query, create another query based on that one, create another query based on that one, and so on until about at least 5 out to maybe 6 levels before Access starts going, this is way too complicated, I can't do it. So I want to use the lookup, close. Access can't quite figure out how these things are supposed to be linked, so I'm going to do it. Here's my customer. And in the orders table, even though it says customer, remember that's the customer ID field, so I can link it to customer ID. And for the purposes of the query, I really don't need to set the referential integrity here. I'm going to save that before I forget. I did forget in the last recording to save the query. This is query pizzas. And what I want in here, or what the customer wants, whoever is asking me for this information, is the order date, and then the customer name, and then the size pizza that they ordered. Okay, so that's data from 2 different tables kind of mixed up, and because the tables have stuff in common, that's not a problem. So my names are a little tight here, so we'll resize again. Remember, when you resize columns, you have to scroll all the way down to the end there again. It's not quite fitting in the box. Every time you find a larger one, resize again so that even the large ones that are scrolled off the screen fit. Okay, so that works, but now my customer looked at this and said, can you sort those by customer name and then in descending order so I can see all the pizzas for Bill Sherlock together? So right now that's not necessarily the case, and these are not in any alphabetical order. These are probably ordered by date, or maybe they're ordered by primary key. It's very hard to tell what they're ordered by right now. So they want them ordered by customer name so that all the customer orders are together, and then the dates are in descending order so that the most recent pizza is first. You may be tempted to do this. Sort by customer name, and then the date in descending order, thinking that that would solve this problem. You run it, and you'll see that the dates are in descending order, but the customer names are not in order at all. When you run a query, Access looks at your sort commands and works them from left to right. So what it's doing here is sorting by order date. And so on a given date, we'll see all the customers who ordered on that date in alphabetical order, but that's not what I want. I want the other way around. Well, why didn't it sort this first? Because I picked it first. Not the way it works. It sorts left to right. So in order to get these to sort the right way, I need the customer name on the left. Okay, That works. So now I have Emmett Aikman and his one order and Jason Andorfer and his 4 orders, and they're in reverse order. But again, the customer says, no, I want the date on the left. Well, you can't do that in design mode because if you put the date on the left, then it sorts by date first. So what we have to do is do that in datasheet view here, and then move the date. And now everything's fine. We go back to design view. The fields are in a different order, right? Because that's the way we need them sorted. But when we run it, Access remembers that you asked for them with the date on the left and then the customer name. So now it's sorted by here's the Andorfer pizzas, here's the ATAC pizzas, and so on. So we got what we wanted out of that. What's that got to do with conditional functions? Nothing, but it does help solve a very common sorting problem where the fields, you need them in one order, but you have to put them in a specific order in the design view in order to get them sorted the right way. So now let's move on to those conditional fields and conditional functions. Start with the if function. And what I want to know is what toppings did they order on this? Now I could list each one of the toppings. There's 5 different toppings, and we could put those over here, add them to the query, and we'd see all the check marks. But what I'd like to do, just as a demonstration, is to have them all appear in one box. So I'm going to create a calculated field that determines which toppings are on that pizza. I'm going to use the builder. I'll zoom in on it so you can see a little bit better. And now I'm going to go into the tables first. Open that up. Here's my tables for the table orders, because that's where the pepperoni, sausage, mushrooms, onions, and green peppers are. Before I use those, I need to go into the functions because I need to see how the if function works. Here's some built-in functions. The if function is a program flow function. So it is an IIF, stands for either immediate if or inline if, is usually what people call it. It's an inline if. Why they don't just use a regular if, I don't know. So I'm going to bring that in. And the if, like all the other ifs in Excel and even in programming, have 1, 2, 3 components. First, your condition. What is it that you want to check? Then what do you do if it's true? What do you do if it's false? Okay, so what I want to do is display the word pepperoni if they selected pepperoni. If they didn't, just display the empty string. So here I'm going to say if the pepperoni field is selected. If that's true, you might be tempted to say if the pepperoni equals yes, if the pepperoni equals true. That's redundant. You really don't need to do that. Because it's a yes-no field, because this is a yes-no field, we don't have to put equals yes equals true. If it has a yes in it, then this is true and we do the true part. I want to display the word pepperoni. If it's false, I want to display nothing. The best way to display nothing is 2 quotes right next to each other. That's called the empty string. It is something, it's not nothing. A little while ago I talked about null. That the empty string is a string that has no characters in it. It's a little bit different than nothing, but not a whole lot different. So that solves my problem. So now we can run that just as a test. Before we do, we should give it a name. So I'm going to go to the beginning here, and let's just call this toppings. And let's test this. If I run it, I'll leave my zoom on because I'll need it again in a second. Any pizza that has pepperoni checked has pepperoni in here. So that seems to be working. And now what I want to do is go back to the builder. Make sure I'm in the right field here. Kind of hard to see with my zoom window. And go back to the builder. And I want to also know if they had sausage. And I want to tack that onto the end. Now tacking it onto the end means concatenate. So I'm going to concatenate. Start a new line, perfectly acceptable. You can press enter whenever you want if it makes your formula a little easier to read. If there's an error in your formula, it'll also make it easier to fix. Once again, I'm going to do an if, inline if. I know that's the command. Press tab. After the parentheses, I want to know if sausage was selected. If it was, give me the word sausage. Otherwise, give me the empty string. And then concatenate to that. The same thing for mushrooms and green peppers and onions. And since it's basically the same thing, I'm going to highlight this. I'm using the Shift key and the left arrow, Control C to copy that. Control V to paste it, paste it, paste it, take out the last ampersand. You don't want the ampersand at the end. That's an error because you're saying we're going to concatenate something else, and then you're not giving it anything. So now I just need to change the names. Double clicking doesn't work, so I'll have to use some arrow keys here. Take that out, and we'll put mushrooms in there. Add mushrooms in here. Looks like I forgot a quotation mark, so I'm going to have to remember to add the quotation mark to every one of those. Notice that sausage is missing its quotation mark at the end, so I'm going to add it. All right, I take that sausage out and put in onions with a quotation mark. And another down arrow. Take out this sausage. Now here I have to be careful because the field name is green pepper and it has a space in it. So I'm going to put the square brackets around it. Green peppers, square bracket. I think it has a space in it. Maybe I should check. Check the table. Orders. Green peppers does not have a space in it. Notice I'm also not paying much attention to capitalization. Doesn't really matter. The square brackets are in there. They're optional, but they don't hurt anything. And then this needs to be green peppers, and I do want a space in there, so it displays with a space. So what this is saying is if the pizza has pepperoni on it, then display the word pepperoni. Concatenate sausage if it has sausage. Concatenate mushrooms if it has mushrooms, and so on. And if any of them are missing, they just come up as the empty string. Concatenating the empty string doesn't do anything, really. It just leaves the string. It concatenates nothing to the end of the string. So let's test that. Run it. And let's see what we got. Well, I already see a problem. They're all smushed together. That's my technical term. But it does seem to be working. Mushrooms and onions, pepperoni and onions, mushrooms, mushrooms and onions, pepperoni, sausage, mushrooms and onions, green peppers. Here's one that's got just about everything in it. So it does seem to be concatenating them the correct way. So the only thing I need to do is just add some spaces in there so that it looks a little nicer in my toppings list. So once again, I'm going back to the builder. And I'm just going to put a space, and notice that Access has now lined all these things up appropriately, or at least the way it thinks is appropriate. I'm going to add a space after every one of these so that if it's included, it's separated from the next one with a space. Give that a quick test, should work. Much better. Resize. Somewhere there's probably one of these that's got all 5 toppings. Haven't seen it yet. There it is. So now everybody fits. So now I can see that Bill Dance ordered a personal pizza with all these toppings on it. Okay, Walt Cyrus ordered a medium pizza with all 5 toppings on it. And I can start making some decisions on this. The next thing our customer wants to know is the coupon savings percent. All right. So in this column, I'm going to add another calculated field. And the coupon savings percent is simply the coupon value divided by the order total. So it's a fairly simple formula. So we'll call it the coupon percent, PCT. And that's going to be equal to the coupon value divided by the order total. Now we can run that and see what we get. What's with the pound signs? That means they don't fit. So we'll expand here, and that's way too many decimal places. So let's start by formatting that as a percent. Actually, I need to go back to design and the property sheet. Where's that guy? There it is. And change this format to percent. And I think I only need 1 decimal place. Now in this case it works. All right. If the coupon, why is this one blank? Because there was no coupon. If the coupon value is null, then the coupon percent is null. Right? But what if we want that to designate as 0? Because the other thing I want to calculate at the very end here is the average coupon percent. And I want that for all orders, not just the ones where there's coupons. The ones where there's no coupon, the coupon percent is 0%. And I want that to display in here. To make that happen, we're going to have to combine two conditional functions. So I'm going to go back to Design View and modify my formula. I'm going to go to the Builder, give myself a little more room, and zoom in again just in case it's hard for you to see. First thing I want to say is if there is a coupon, then go ahead and calculate this. If there isn't, just give me a 0. So I need an if statement. We know that's an IIF, parentheses. Now how do I say if the coupon is missing or null? You cannot say if the coupon equals double quotes, the empty string. The empty string is different than null. Right? So you can't do that. You have to use one of the logical functions called isNull. And then the field name goes in parentheses. So zooming in on that, you can see down here at the bottom of the screen that says if parentheses, that parentheses is for the if statement, is null coupon. If the coupon is null, comma, then I want to display a 0. Otherwise, I want to do this formula. Right? The other thing I need to do is add a parenthesis at the end. That's for the if statement. So my if statement still has 3 components. Here's my condition. If the coupon is null, that's my condition. If it's true, then I get a 0. Otherwise, I calculate this result. So I've combined 2 conditional functions here. One that says if this is null, and another the if statement altogether. All right, let's see how that works. Okay, so now I'm getting zeros where I used to be getting nothing. And now I can scroll all the way to the bottom here. And I can add one of the totals. In the latest versions of Access, this has been around for a little while, you can request totals on any data sheet. Here's my totals. What total do you want? I want the average coupon value for all those coupons. And on average, that's kind of high, but if you look at some of these, some people are saving large amounts of money. They must have big coupons. And we may look at this and say, that's not good. We're losing 25% of our income because of these coupons. So we can start making some decisions and say this coupon's only for a large or having varying coupon values based on size. But our spreadsheet, our database is telling us something here that we might not have known, that 25% of every single order is lost to coupon values. Coupons are obviously working well because people are using them, right? But they're getting a lot off, and we might need to adjust some things. Okay, so that's if and is null. Let me do one more. What if I want to find out the cost of each one of these sizes of pizzas? I'm going to insert a column here. I want to know the size cost. Okay. The size cost is based on the size. If it's a large pizza, it's $15. If it's a medium pizza, it's $10, and so on. I could use an if statement with an embedded if, If it's a large, then charge them 15, else another if statement. Could do that. Let's take a look at that. And then I'll show you a different way to do it. So I'm going to go back to the builder, and I think I'm going to skip the zoom here. I'm going to say if the size equals large, and you must watch the capital. Now the capitalization wouldn't matter much. Then give me a 15. That's $15. Otherwise, I need to ask another question. If the size equals medium, then charge them $10. Otherwise, ask another question. And we just can ask as many of these questions as we want. They're either called embedded if statements because this second if statement is embedded inside the first one, or they're called chained if statements because one only executes if this one's false, and we could look at it that way. We just keep going, and the only tricky part here is putting enough parentheses at the end to make Access happy, because for every if statement parenthesis that you open, you'll need one at the very end to close it. So that's possible. Let's finish it just in case. So there's another if statement here, and again I can press the enter key, start a new line, make it a little easier to read. If the size equals small, then charge them $5, otherwise charge them $3.50. Notice I don't have to ask if it's a personal pizza. If it's not large, it's not medium, it's not small, then it must be personal. And the personal cost is $3.50. So I don't have to ask that last question. You should never write an if statement where you only need the true part. You never need the false part. If statements always have two answers. So that should work. Let's test it. Click on OK and run it. And it said, nope, we're missing parentheses. So as I said, I had 3 if statements here. So I'm going to need 3 parentheses. Let's try it again. Notice that Access doesn't give you any errors until you try to execute the query. And here's my 15, 10 for a medium, here's a small, and there's a personal for 3.5. So that seems to work. All right, that's one way to do it. Now I'm going to modify that and use a select statement instead. So I'm going to bring the builder back in, and maybe it's worth zooming in here so you can see what I'm doing. Instead of multiple ifs, I'm going to use a select statement. So I'm going to take out this formula. I'm going to be redoing some typing, but that's okay. And I'm going to use what's called a switch statement instead. You would think it'd be something like select, but switch is kind of like a light switch with lots of lights where you flip one on or a different one on. The difference between this switch statement and light switches is only one switch can be on at any given time. Switch is just left over from most programming languages, particularly Visual Basic and C# and SQL. That's just the command that you use. With a switch statement, you provide it lots of options and the corresponding values. So it looks a little like this. It's pretty simple. If, and each one of these is a condition. Notice it says expression. This is a condition. If the size equals large, then 15, comma. You just keep going now. If the size equals medium, comma, 10. If the size, you don't even have to say if the size equals small, then 5. And in this case, we do have to provide the personal option. If it's personal, then give me $3.50. Okay, so there's the switch. Little easier to understand for most people instead of all the ifs. Only one set of parentheses to worry about, and you can have as many conditions inside here as you want. We have 4. You can have as many as you want, and that can help you save you some time in calculations. Let's test that. Should be getting the same answers. Uh-oh. When you get one of these, oh, that means you've got a field name that you referred to that doesn't exist. I mistyped size in my formula. So I need to go back into my builder and see if I can find where I typed size without the I, very first one. So whenever you see the fill in a parameter, especially if it's not a parameter query, we're going to be talking about those in the next recording. If it's not a parameter query, then you shouldn't be getting parameters. If you are, you probably just misspelled a field name. Click on OK, try it again. There we go, and here I get an error. So maybe I misspelled personal. Probably did. You probably saw it when I was typing this. Let's go take a look. And personal, looks like it's spelled right. 3.5. Oh, I forgot to say size equals in front of that. Size equals personal, then 3.5. So let's try that. Always good to test these. Now I'm getting the answers that I want. So that's another conditional function. If you're paying close attention, you might have seen there was a third one called choose. It's very similar to switch. It's just a little easier or a little harder, I think, to understand. And those are the conditional functions. Hopefully they'll simplify some of your calculations.